going to use some automated tools. First thing we need to do is connect router 2 to router 3. I'm going to use serial cables this time. All right. You probably know by now when you use a serial cable, one side of the connection has to be configured with a clock rate, and it acts sort of like a drum beat. It provides a timing mechanism for that communication link. So in this instance, I'm going to select the serial DCE. In terms of serials and clocks, one side will be the DCE, meaning that's the side that actually keeps the timing for the link, and then the other end will be the DTE. I'm going to select a serial DCE, and I'm going to make router 2 the DCE, and we're going to use the serial 030. Make the connection to the next router. Again, I'm going to use serial 030. Okay. While I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the interface and set the clock rate. Again, the clock rate is set on one end only, and that's the DCE end. I'm going to use 64,000. All right, go to the other router. Turn on the interface. We have green light. Okay. Although I turned off the clock rate, we still have green light, but without that clock rate, we will not be able to ping across the interface. But as stated earlier, one side must be the clock for the link. All right. Go ahead and run a serial cable between router 3 and router 0. I'll make router 0 the clock. All right. Let's add some additional hosts to this particular network. We're going to do some simulation. All right. We have an option here. We could use traditional subnetting, or we could use variable length subnet masks. Okay. Which would be the better option? Well, let's take a look at the traditional subnetting. Now let's use the traditional subnet calculator. The first thing we need to do is determine how many networks there are. How many networks do you see? Josh? Okay. All right, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So we have 5 networks. So we go to the subnet calculator, and we'll put in our base network, which is this, 155.155.0.0. And how many networks do we need? 5. I can't select 4 because that's not going to meet the requirement, so I need to select 8. Select 8, and I click the Calculate button and the List Network button. There are those 8 networks. Okay. Note the subnet mask. Okay. So if we consider the new subnet mask, we can determine how many hosts there will be available on each one of those networks, right? The formula would be 2 to the h minus 2, and h represents the host bits. Okay, we're looking at a slash, so 8 plus 3 additional bits in that third octet. That's a slash 19, right? So that means there are how many host bits available? 32 subtract 8, 19. 13. Okay, so 2 to the 13th power is what value? Let's bring up the calculator here. Okay, 2 to the 13th power, then minus 2, that'll be 8,190, right? Each network had, or could have, over 8,100 hosts. What's that? That's too wasteful, yeah, especially for this network, right? This network has 2 hosts. So we're going to waste like over 8,100 addresses on this network, and then we're going to waste over another 8,100 on this particular network. So we don't want to use traditional subnet. We want to use variable length subnet mask. Okay. Let's go to our variable length subnet mask calculator. All right. All right, we'll start by putting in the base network. This is what we're starting with. And it's a slash 16. Okay. It's important that you note these procedures because you could use this calculator when completing some of your homework assignments as well as your final project for the class. Okay. All right. We need to specify how many hosts we need on each network. How many hosts are on this network? We have 1,900 plus 1, 2, and then this particular interface. 1,903, right? Okay, we'll say this is network B. 510 plus 1, 2, 3. And how many hosts on this network? 1, 2, and this interface would be 3. Okay, are we done? Okay, yeah, 2 more with 2. Okay, 2. 2. All right, so we can get rid of network F. And how many subnets do we have now? 5. So we need to update this variable. And we're going to go ahead and click Submit. Okay. And there's variable and subnet mask. We have the the needed size, the allocation, the network address, the subnet mask, the range, that's the host range, and the broadcast address. Now let's go ahead and assign some IP addresses. We'll start with the default gateway for this particular local area network. We'll be configuring F0. Turn it on. What's a good IP address? Let's look at the chart. That's the largest network, so that's subnet A. What's a good default gateway address? Okay, let's look at the range here. Okay, we'll use the lowest in the range, .1. What about the subnet mask? It's 248. Okay. All right, and let's use DHCP this time. First, we need to assign IP address to the DHCP server. We'll give it 155.155.0.2. Okay, and the appropriate subnet mask. Okay, and what about the default gateway? That's 0.1. Okay. All right. Now let's go in and set up the DHCP server. All right. When you configure the DHCP server, there's going to be a pool that's there by default. What I found the easiest process is to just edit the default pool, because you can't delete it, and if you can't delete it, it'll create problems in the future. So we'll just edit the default pool. We'll leave the name as is. Server pool is fine. What's the default gateway that the DHCP server should issue? .1. And now the DNS server does not have to be a part of the same network as the default gateway. Okay. All right. Now this is where we specify the range of IP addresses that the server should issue. Let's assume that we will have additional static IPs in the network. For example, we know we don't want to issue the .1 because that belongs to the default gateway. We don't want it to issue the .2 because it belongs to the DHCP server. So let's go ahead and assume we're going to have additional devices that need static IP addresses. So let's start with the range of 11, okay, as the minimum value. And then we get to specify how many addresses do we want this server to issue. Let's go back to the table. We could have up to 2,046 on this particular network, but we don't want to issue more than 2,000. So we'll specify that criteria here. Okay. We see that the service is on, and we'll go ahead and select Save, and we see the update here. Okay. All right. Now let's go to the PC, and instead of us assigning static variables, we're going to select DHCP.